Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our next GoAERO expert lecture. It's my pleasure to introduce GoAERO CEO Gwen Leiter.
Thank you, Nidhi, and welcome everyone to our expert lecture for today. We are thrilled to be able to welcome the Federal Aviation Administration, Sandy Yamane and John Soltis. As you all know, GoAERO is supported by a number of different partners, including Boeing and NASA and RTX and Honeywell. And so too, we are supported by organizations, both first responder and aviation organizations around the world. Next week, GoAERO will be at the Commercial UAV Conference in Las Vegas. And then the following week, we will be at ICAS's conference giving a keynote on, I want to say September 12th, and that is in Florence, Italy. Later in the month, there are other events as well, and we look forward to our continuing expert lecture program, as well as meeting any of you at the different conferences where we will be. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce two phenomenal experts who will be able to help all of you along in your flight pathway. John Soltis is an unmanned aircraft systems program manager at the FAA in Aircraft Certification Service. He is a subject matter on airworthiness certification and production certification of UAS, optionally piloted aircraft, and hybrid aircraft space launch platforms. Some of John's UAS contributions include type, production, and airworthiness certifications of the Matternet M2. And John joined the FAA in 2006 and has worked with several experimental airworthiness applicants such as Scaled Composites and General Atomics and Virgin Galactic and Virgin Orbit and Northrop Grumman. And John has previously served honorably in the United States Marine Corps. Joining John today is our friend Sandy Yamane, who is also in the Unmanned Aircraft Systems program at the FAA. Sandy is a subject matter expert on airworthiness certification of UAS, optionally piloted aircraft, and hybrid aircraft space launch platforms. Sandy's been at the FAA for over 25 years and has served in various capacities. Sandy participated in Scaled Composite SpaceShipOne program that won the Ansari XPrize in 2004 and currently participates in Virgin Galactic SpaceShipTwo and the Stratolaunch Talon programs. In addition to his FAA experience, Sandy is a retired U.S. Air Force officer, and he previously served as an expert for the GoFly Prize competition. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce John Soltis and Sandy Yamane. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gwen. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my slides. Let me know if you can see them.
Yep, got it, Sandy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sandy Yamane. I'm a Federal Aviation Administration Unmanned Aircraft Systems Program Manager. Along with my partner, John Soltis, we are the subject matter experts of the FAA Experimental U.S. Airborne Certification process and provide technical assistance and support to FAA field offices on U.S. certifications. I'd like to welcome everyone to the U.S. Airborne Certification Overview presentation that was primarily developed for the GoAERO participants. This presentation provides a high-level overview of the U.S. Airborne certification processes in FAA Order 8130.34 and will not address the details of the various process steps and the applicant and FAA task. John, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sandy, for the introduction. As Sandy mentioned, I am also a subject matter expert of the FAA Experimental UAS Airworthiness Certification process and provide technical assistance and support to the FAA field offices on UAS certifications. Now let's get started with the presentation, and please hold on to your questions until the end of the presentation, and we will answer as many as we can with time permitting. Next slide, Sandy.
This presentation will address the following: outline the requirements to operate a civil UAS in the U.S. under 14 CFR Part 91, provide a high-level overview of the certification processes in FAA Order 8130.34, Chapter 3, Sections 2 and 4, identify common mistakes with U.S. airworthiness applications, answer questions from the GoAERO participants, and lastly, provide references to assist participants in their U.S. airworthiness applications.
What are the requirements to operate a civil UAS in the U.S. national airspace, or the NAS, under 14 CFR Part 91? Aircraft registration. Due to the GoAERO fly-off criteria of carrying the Alex mannequin, 125-pound large UAS over 55 pounds, will need a Part 47 aircraft registration, commonly referred to as an N. Airworthiness certification or special flight authorization. Airworthiness certifications are issued to U.S. registered aircraft. Special flight authorizations or SFAs are issued to foreign registered aircraft. Foreign aircraft will need to be registered and marked in accordance with their country's regulatory requirements. Airspace authorizations. The FAA Air Traffic Organization issues them as a certificate of authorization, commonly referred to as a COA, on FAA Form 7711-1. Waivers and exemptions. The UAS or proposed operations may not comply with applicable regulations. Waivers and exemptions to provide relief. A waiver is a deviation to operate outside of certain rules of regulations. In Part 91, there's a list of rules that may be waived in Subpart 1 or Subpart J. An example of a regulatory relief of rules that we are not eligible for waiver. The FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024 has mandated that the FAA to move away from exemptions and shift more towards waivers. It is also unknown how this transition will take place and will not be discussed in this presentation. Other authorizations. Spectrum authorization issued by the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, for UAS command and control C2 frequency. Operate a UAS without remote ID for 14 CFR Part 89.
FAA Order 8130.34D is the current guidance the FAA uses for airworthiness certification of UAS. Revision E is currently in work and is expected to be released later this year. This presentation has been tailored to address current and upcoming policy updates. This order is used by the FAA for issuing special airworthiness certificates for experimental purposes for U.S. registered UAS operating under 14 CFR Part 91. There are 5 experimental purposes the FAA issues special airworthiness certificates for U.S. registered civil UAS. However, for the GoAERO competition, participants will only need research and development, or R&D, and exhibition experimental purposes. R&D will be used for company flight testing for proof of concept for further development, and exhibition will be used for the GoAERO fly-off demo flights. Special flight authorizations are issued to foreign registered civil UAS using a hybrid process, combining the procedures from FAA Orders 8130.2, Chapter 22, and 8130.34.
Here's an overview of the UAS airworthiness certification process we will be covering from FAA Order 8130.34, Chapter 3, Section 2. Pre-application tasks, airworthiness application submittals, FAA offices involved in processing the application. They are commonly referred to as the FAA certification team. FAA certification team assessment of the airworthiness application. Determination of the applicant's tasks. Conducting a safety evaluation. Applicant's tasks that need to be completed. And on-site inspection. Again, we won't be providing the detail of the process steps or applicant and FAA tasks as this presentation provides a high-level overview of the UAS airworthiness certification process in FAA Order 8130.34.
Pre-application task. The FAA recommends that all potential U.S. airworthiness applicants review FAA Order 8130.34 with the primary focus on Chapter 3, Sections 2 and 4. These sections provide key information on the application process and on-site inspection requirements. Aircraft registration. All civil unmanned aircraft operating in the U.S. National Airspace System must be registered. For the size of unmanned aircraft required for the GoAERO competition, which will be over 55 pounds, U.S.-based participants will need a 14 CFR Part 47 aircraft registration, commonly referred to as N numbers. GoAERO will schedule another presentation that provides participants with more detailed information on the Part 47 registration process. Mark the unmanned aircraft per 14 CFR Part 45. The N number and words experimental will need to be on the unmanned aircraft. Refer to FAA Advisory Circular 45-2, identification and registration marking for more details on how to mark aircraft. All U.S. airworthiness applicants will also need to create an account in the Airworthiness Certification or AWC applicant portal. This portal will be used to formally submit your U.S. airworthiness applications and special flight authorization request. For foreign participants pursuing SFAs, foreign participants will need to follow their country's registration and marking requirements.
The Airworthiness Application Package consists of FAA Form 8130-6, the program letter, and the safety checklist. FAA Form 8130-6 is the application for U.S. Airworthiness Certificate. Refer to FAA Advisory Circular 21-12 Charlie, Application for U.S. Airworthiness Certificates, FAA Form 8130-6, for instructions on how to complete this form. A sample can be found in Figure D-17 in the Advisory Circular. The program letter outlines the program objectives and describes the purpose of the flight operation per 14 CFR 21-193. The program letter must be detailed enough to permit the FAA to prescribe the conditions and limitations necessary to ensure the safe operation of the unmanned aircraft. The flight test areas described in the program letter are used by the FAA Air Traffic Organization for Airspace Authorization, or a COA. There is a program letter template in FAA Order 8130.34, Appendix C. The program letter is a regulatory required document that is a part of aircraft records and may be released to the public under the Freedom of Information Act, or what we like to call FOIA, request. Proprietary, confidential, or company-sensitive information subject to international traffic arms regulations or export administration regulations should not be included in the program. The safety checklist is a document that describes the current and planned configuration of the UAS. The FAA certification team uses the safety checklist to evaluate the risk, hazards, and mitigations unique to the UAS. There is a safety checklist template in FAA Order 8130.34 Appendix D. The safety checklist is not a regulatory required document and is not included in the aircraft records. The FAA recommends identifying the document as proprietary and sensitive. The FAA recommends the applicants use the question and answer format with the program letter and the safety checklist templates in FAA Order 8130.34, Appendix C and D. The format makes it easier for applicants to complete and for the FAA to review and assess those documents. When GoAERO participants are ready to submit their UAS airworthiness or SFA applications, please coordinate with your GoAERO point of contact or POC for the preliminary review of your application package. When participants receive concurrence from their GoAERO POC, participants will submit their application package in the AWC portal and assign it to the Geographic Certificate Management section. Processing original or initial airworthiness certifications is the responsibility of certificate management sections. Recurrent certifications are the responsibility of the Flight Standards District Offices, or FSDOs, as we like to call them. For this presentation, we will address airworthiness certifications as original airworthiness certifications. For special flight authorizations, participants with foreign registered UAS will submit an SFA application letter per FAA Order 8130.2, Chapter 22, in lieu of the FAA Form 8130-6 and the program letter. The SFA application letter will contain similar information in what's in the 8130-6 application and program letter.
Notification of FAA offices. The airworthiness application is disseminated from the certificate management section to the FAA certification team, which consists of an aviation safety inspector from the Geographic Certificate Management section, or CMS. This ASI will be responsible for processing the application and will act as a single point of contact between the applicant and the FAA certification team throughout the U.S. airworthiness certification process. All communications should be routed through this ASI. An operations ASI from the Geographical Flight Standards District Office, or FSDO. They review the proposed flight test areas and conduct a ground risk assessment and communicate their decision of acceptance or denial with the Certificate Management Section ASI or Air Traffic. Air Traffic U.S. Policy Office, or AJVP 22. They conduct an air risk assessment to determine airspace feasibility. Air Traffic processes airspace authorizations in the form of Certificate Authorizations, or COA, on FAA Form 7711-1. And finally, the Operations ASI from AFS 751. They review the operational aspects of the civil U.S. operation. They also identify any other authorizations, waivers, and exemptions that may be needed and oversee the flight test portion of the on-site inspection if required.
All right, FAA assessment. The FAA certification team will conduct a preliminary review of the applicant's program letter and safety checklist to determine the airspace and operational feasibility. The Geographic FSDO Operations ASI and Air Traffic AJVP 22 will conduct a ground and air risk assessment to determine the applicant's compliance with 14 CFR 91.305 and 91.319. If found feasible, air traffic will start the COA processing. The FAA certification team will evaluate the UAS configuration and proposed operations. After reviewing an applicant's program letter and safety checklist, if the program is deemed feasible by the FAA certification team, the applicant will be invited to participate in a safety evaluation. If any updates to the program letter and or safety checklist are required, the CM section ASI will notify the applicant and request updates to these documents. The FAA certification team will reassess the updated documents until they are found acceptable.
Determination of applicant task. U.S. have large variances in size, weight, technology, and flight envelopes. The U.S. airworthiness certification process is based on assessed risk using the risk index in Appendix E in FAA Order 8130.34. Appendix E assists in determining the appropriate certification task for a particular unmanned aircraft. The risk index indicates that programs deemed to have lower risk can satisfy the pertinent regulatory standards by completing fewer airworthiness certification tasks than programs deemed to have higher risk. Information from the program letter and safety checklist is used to assess the risk categories and special considerations using point values. The accumulated points provided a total score to assign a risk group 1, 2, or 3. Applicants will determine their task based on their assigned risk group.
Conduct a safety evaluation. The applicant is responsible for providing a presentation to the FAA certification team and providing a detailed explanation of the information in the safety checklist and program letter. Because applicants and the FAA certification team members are located across the US or the world, Zoom or Microsoft Teams meeting platforms are commonly used to conduct online safety evaluations. The CM section ASI will coordinate and schedule the safety evaluation meeting with the applicant and the FAA certification team members. The FAA certification team will assess the UAS flight operations and evaluate the risk, hazards, and mitigations associated with them to determine compliance with the regulations and whether they are safe for operation in the U.S. national airspace system. At the end of the safety evaluation, the FAA certification team will provide feedback to the applicant and provide a list of action items that may need to be addressed prior to the on-site inspection of the UAS.
Applicants complete certification task. Applicants are responsible for completing the tasks identified for their assigned risk group 1, 2, or 3 outlined in Appendix C. In addition, we recommend reviewing the supporting and additional documents guidance in Chapter 3, Section 4 to ensure you don't forget anything. Some of the key tasks the FAA looks for are: has the applicant established a maintenance manual, flight manual, and associate checklist? The FAA understands most applicants are in the beginning stages of their research and development program, and we don't expect comprehensive documents. The FAA encourages applicants to establish baseline documents using FAA guidance and then build onto these documents as you progress in your flight testing program. Exemptions and waivers. Applicants must establish that their proposed operation will comply with the pertinent operating regulations. If an applicant's proposed operation does not comply with the applicable regulations, the applicant must obtain a waiver or exemption to permit the conduct of the proposed U.S. operation. We recommend applicants have early discussions with their FAA certification team to determine which applicable regulations would need a waiver or exemption. It is the applicant's responsibility to submit the waiver request or petition for exemption, as these processes are outside the scope of the 8130.34 processes. Other authorizations may consist of FCC licenses for spectrum authorizations and U.S. operations without remote ID or Part 89. Safety evaluation action items. Ensure all action items identified during the safety evaluation have been completed. Action items may have been tasked or assigned to the applicant or the FAA.
All right, conduct of the on-site inspection. The CM section ASI will schedule the on-site inspection with the applicant upon completion of the certification items and tasks. The ASI invites the FAA certification team members and the geographic visitor. The FAA certification team will review the applicant's documents and inspect the unmanned aircraft, ground control station, and associated elements. The FAA certification team will have the applicant perform a data connectivity check to test the UAS flight control system and conduct an engine run up to ensure the ground control station, instrumentation, and the unmanned aircraft engine propeller and flight controls are working properly. When the FAA certification team determines the UAS is safe for operation, the CM section ASI will issue the experimental airworthiness certificate, FAA Form 8130-7, or special flight authorization, and the COA FAA 7711-1. The ASI will review the operating limitations and COA with the applicant so they fully understand their operational responsibilities. The FAA certification team may elect to witness the applicant perform an initial flight test as part of the on-site inspection. AFS 751 Operations ASI oversee this portion of the on-site inspection. If the AFS 751 operational ASI is unable to attend, The task then may be delegated to an Ops ASI from the Geographic Flight Standards District Office, or FSDO. Applicants will conduct a basic flight test profile per their flight test plan. The flight will allow the FAA to validate the flight test area and observe operational procedures. The flight portion of the on-site inspection is not required if an operations ASI elects not to attend.
Here's a list of common mistakes made by applicants. Unrealistic scheduling expectations. Processing U.S. air certification takes a lot of coordination and time to process, and this won't happen overnight. We recommend submitting applications 180 days or 6 months in advance prior to starting planned flight test activities. U.S. aircraft registration has not been completed. Applicants reserve an N number, but sometimes forget to submit their registration application for the reserved N number. This leads to applicants being unable to find their N number in the AWC portal and unable to submit their airworthiness applications. This could lead to significant delays because the unmanned aircraft must have a valid registration issued. GoAERO will schedule a future presentation with another FAA guest speaker that will provide more details on the Part 47 aircraft registration process. The program letter and safety checklists are incomplete or do not adequately describe the UAS. The more information description in these documents, the easier it will be for the FAA to evaluate them. We want to avoid having applicants constantly revise their program letter and safety checklist due to lack of information or because they are too generalized. The format of the flight test error occurrence is improper. They need to be in the degrees, minutes, seconds, or DMS format. If the flight test error occurrence are improperly formatted in the program letter, it will need to be revised for FAA air traffic to accept the program letter and start processing the airspace authorization. Applicants' tasks are incomplete. Some of the common missed tasks are not established in a maintenance manual or flight manual. And lastly, and this is a very big one, applicants did not submit their request for additional authorizations, waivers, and exemptions in a timely manner. We recommend submitting requests at least 120 days or 4 months prior to starting planned flight testing. Some of the common examples that require authorizations, waivers, and exemptions are authorization to operate without remote ID or Part 89. Use of Part 107 remote pilot to conduct a U.S. operation under Part 91. Or unable to meet VFR fuel requirements, 91-151. This is usually a big one because we do have situations where an electric UAS may not even be able to operate for beyond 30 minutes. So that usually requires an exemption. Again, I want to reemphasize the FAA is transitioning away from exemptions and moving towards waivers. When FAA flight standards have established the policy and process for this transition, GoAERO will schedule a future presentation with another FAA guest speaker to address this transition and provide details on the new waiver process. Okay, and this leads to questions.
Thank you so much, John and Sandy. As a reminder to all of our participants, please utilize the Q&A function in the Zoom webinar to post any questions that you might have. John and Sandy, I know that you mentioned that there were several areas, including making sure that teams are aware of timeline and that sort of thing. Is there anything else in terms of what teams should be looking out for, anything that they need to be careful for, anything that you learned from the GoFly process that our GoAERO teams can now learn from?
Yeah, pretty much all this. I mean, it's very vital that they review FAA Order 8130.34D early and have a good understanding of the doc. I mean, again, the main documents are going to be the application form, the 8130-6, the program and safety. The sooner you can start that, the better, because especially the program and safety checklist, they take a lot of time to develop. So the sooner, the better. And with one thing we've kind of learned over the years is that you know, it's constantly changing, and you know, you will have situations throughout your flight test program that you may have to make some updates. So that's where you have to again work with your cert team and make sure you keep everybody well, you know, aware of what's going on with your UAS, especially if you have any type of major changes that might be coming up in regards to hardware or software. So it's very important to stay on top of that. But yeah, the sooner they can prepare, it makes it a whole lot easier when they're ready to submit their application, that they have everything kind of covered. I don't know, John, anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think one of the things on your last slide that you presented, I think applicants need to understand that it's on them to figure out which regulation they can comply and which ones they cannot comply with, and then, you know, do they need to submit an exemption or a waiver? I know a lot of times in the past we've experienced with applicants where they thought that it was our responsibility, but we're not the ones that are operating the UA and providing pilots and all the other things that go along with that, you know, what the capabilities are, you know, like you said, you know, with the fuel requirements. I mean, we can get, you know, a good idea from the program letter and safety checklist, but really the operator or applicant is the one that knows whether they can comply with a lot of those operating rules and which ones that they would need to submit a waiver or exemption for. So.
And John and Sandy, we have a question here actually that's that we'll also respond to, which is that GoAERO help by providing a checklist that will help us comply. And absolutely, GoAERO is very much here to help our teams. As you know, we have Gardner Aviation on board who will be available to teams to support them in stage 2 and stage 3 to ensure compliance, to provide support, answer questions. So really, we are your first resource to come to so that we can help you through this entire process. But I wonder along those lines, Sandy and John, we certainly have a number of teams who will be new to this process, completely new to what it means to apply for FAA certification and to understand all of these regulations. Is there a particular resource or somewhere where they might be able to start to sort of, you know, make sure they have a handle in terms of all of these details?
Interesting you brought that up. On our next slide, after questions, we do have a reference slide, and we have links. And part of that will provide links to the current FAA guidance, and we'll also be forwarding job aids to where the teams can use. They'll have basic information in there, and they'll have links to the other FAA websites and databases to use as part of their application process. So yeah, we'll be providing some of those tools to all applicants that will be posted on the GoAERO website.
Great. And then is that, will you also be able to provide information on the certificate of authorization, the COA process as well for the teams?
Yeah, well, actually the 34, in the 34 Delta or anything with the 34, the COA processing is part of the 34 process. So basically what happens is once we see the application, once it's the initial review is done, the ground and air risk assessment's pretty much been reviewed and it found acceptable, it kind of branches into two. The CERT team looks more on the operational side, and then air traffic will process the COA. So it kind of splits into two processes and then comes back at the very end together. And then when the certificate management section ASI issues the certificate, they'll also go issue the COA, and then they'll go through the limitations and the COA requirements, and that way they fully understand their operational requirements. So yeah, it's all part of the 34 process.
I wonder then, Sandy, if you wouldn't mind moving to your next slide and perhaps talking through the different resources.
Here you go. So yeah, here's a link to the current guidance in 34 Delta. Once revision E gets released, we'll let everybody know. We'll provide a link to 34 Echo. There are some major updates, but a lot of this presentation did cover some of the major areas. Also, there's a FAA Order 8900.1. This is more on the operational side. So we do have guidance in regards to, like, for the maintenance manual, in regards to the maintenance and inspection programs. and then also some of the general operational requirements for UAS in volumes 8 and volume 16. And then John and I will be providing 2 job aids. So right now we do have it out for our FAA offices, but it's more for more of the kind of generic for folks that want to go beyond visual line of sight. We're going to take those job aids and kind of tweak them for the GoAERO participants' purposes. See, the first one, U.S. application job aid, that kind of basically everything we just kind of talk about, it's going to be in outline form. And it will provide links to guidance, materials, and some of the AWC portal and all that. So yeah, it's going to provide you a lot of the links. And then we do have this 34 FAA CERT team, which is more of an illustration of how the interaction between the applicant, the CM section, ASI, and the CERT team, and also kind of shows you the breakdown of how the COA is processed from AJVP 22 to the service centers down to the ATC facilities, and how everything kind of routes back up through AJVP 22 and comes back to the ASI. So yeah, that'll be helpful once we get those out.
Just so teams are aware that we will be providing not only this deck, but also the links to all of the resources that both Sandy and John are speaking to. And all of those resources will be available on herox.com/GoAERO. So we encourage you to make sure that you're not only registered, but that you're also looking at all of the various tabs on the website to ensure that you have knowledge of all of the resources that are available to you there. A question that's come out is that, can you share a little bit more about the difference, or can you repeat the information on the difference between a waiver and an exemption?
Yeah, waiver, well, many of the regulations do have a subpart, which has a kind of a very small list of rules within that regulation that can be waived. So like on the earlier slide referred to Part 91, there's a subpart J. So there's certain rules in Part 91 that can be waived. If any of those rules that you're looking at is not on that list, then you have to basically you have to get an exemption for that. So whereas a waiver is more of a deviation to the rule, whereas an exemption provides regulatory relief to that rule.
Exactly.
But yeah, if there's a rule that they're questioning, first thing you need to do is take a look at that subpart J and see if it's eligible for a waiver. If it is, then you would use the waiver process. If it's not on that list, then it's an exemption. However, like we kind of mentioned earlier, that due to the FAA Modernization Act of 2024, flight standards is going to be moving away from exemptions and more towards waivers. So right now it's kind of hard to say, because it looks like everything's going to be moving towards waivers. So until we get word from flight standards, we really don't know and can't really talk about this process at this time.
Okay, and then as a reminder to teams, we will be doing follow-up webinars, of course, through stage 2 and stage 3, when these requirements will become particularly critical to you. As a reminder, the resources will be available on our website at herox.com/GoAERO. And then also remember that we have Gardner Aviation as a partner, who have decades of experience with the FAA and will be providing support through the entire process for you. If you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we will continue to be working with the FAA to provide support to all of the teams. Yes, thank you, Sandy, for that. Yes, as a reminder, please ensure that you are reaching out to GoAERO first. Should you have questions regarding your certification process, the COAs, et cetera, and ensuring your compliance, and then we will make sure that any questions that we aren't able to help you with, the FAA can step in and answer those questions for you.
Okay, well, this pretty much concludes our presentation. Again, thank you for your attendance and good luck in the GoAERO competition. Is there any other questions that need to be answered?
It looks like we've covered everything so far, but thank you so much, Sandy and John, for this incredible information and all the resources that you are providing and that you will continue to provide to our teams. We very much appreciate your partnership and support, and we look forward to continuing to work together.
Thank you. Same here. We look forward to working with you and all the GoAERO participants in the future.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.